welcome Craig from Bridge. The aim of this interview is to understand how Bridge is currently convening their online CoPs, and this interview is basically to collect information that's going to feed into the learning brief that's compiled by the Bridge KM team. Bridge CoPs have moved from the traditional face-to-face to the online platforms. What can you say are some of the disadvantages and advantages that the online platforms have offered to Bridge?
Okay, cool. Thanks, Akani. So the first thing is Bridge actually started experimenting with online CoPs before COVID-19 hit. So during 2019, we had our traditional face-to-face CoPs, the physical meetings of people within the building, and we would stream on various platforms to people online to experiment how it was going. Obviously, during 2020, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we were forced to go online completely with all of our operations, and so from March 2020 we had our first online CoP, and we haven't had a physical CoP since. So obviously some of the advantages of that is the ability for people who weren't able to attend CoPs previously to come. So a national CoP now is really national. It's not just based geographically to Joburg or Cape Town or Durban. Anyone can attend that is on the database. Unfortunately, one of the disadvantages of that is that physical aspect that you get when you are meeting with people. And so we're still trying to work around how to do some of those things, but you miss that face-to-face interaction with people.
Because the aim of communities of practice is to ensure that participants are well involved, engaged, and very interactive. From your experience of convening online communities of practice, what would you say are some of the features that ensure that your participants are continuously engaged?
Okay, so again, as I mentioned previously, we were very fortunate in as much as we started experimenting with this a lot before we needed to. So we worked with a couple of platforms before, and we figured out that Zoom is probably the best one for everyone to use for various reasons. So Zoom is our platform of choice. It allows for a certain number of participants. We've only reached that limit a few times, and so we find that we have enough capacity for Zoom. Then secondly, it allows for a chat function for the videos, for sharing of screens. And then when it comes to getting actual active engagement, we use a couple of free online tools. Of course, we don't want to restrict people who don't have access to paid versions of things. And so that's why we use free tools. We use Mentimeter to record the sort of opinions of people as we're happening, or as the CoP is happening. And so a question will be asked, we can put up a Menti poll. This can allow us to gauge things on a sort of yes-no response to an open-ended question where people can put down their opinions. It allows us to also record those responses post the event, which allows us to add them to the meeting highlights, which is really, really useful. Then we also have recently started using something called Jamboards. This is almost like a virtual flipboard or whiteboard or whatever you want. This allows people to add ideas to a sort of virtual sticky board as they think about them. It allows the facilitator to then put all of those ideas within groupings or categories like you would in a in a physical meeting. So it's been really useful in terms of engagement like that, and of course just trying to get people to be engaged by asking questions that aren't closed, and good facilitation.
Sounds as though there's a lot that online platforms offer to the communities of practice, and it sounds like most of this allows for continuous engagement amongst the participants as well as the facilitator. So what would you say are some of the learnings that you as Bridge would share with the broader education sector, and some learnings that they can also apply as well?
Okay, yeah, so I think that's been one of the really useful things about this whole situation is, of course, whilst we're doing it, it's very important that we do it right, but we also need to, like you were saying, learn as we go along, and from those learnings we are able to disseminate those, and other organizations will be able to implement those learnings and not have such a steep learning curve. And so very recently we sent out a survey to the participants that have been part of at least one online COP, and we asked a number of questions. The learnings that came out of that are, we have to be very intentional when planning an online community of practice. A lot of people have just tried to translate what they would have done in a physical meeting onto the online space, and that just doesn't seem to work. And so over time we've learned that it's very important that we have a facilitator that knows what they're doing and that is able to hold the content that is both discussed and brought into the meeting. So firstly, a skilled facilitator is very important. Then secondly, at a sort of deeper level, is we've found that breakaway rooms are an extremely useful tool for engagement. However, when it comes to the breakaways, you have to again be very intentional with your communication around the breakaway rooms, and that means that you can't just randomly assign people to a breakaway room. Before the meeting, you would communicate with them and say, during the meeting, we are going to have 1 or 2 breakaway sessions. During the session, we are going to discuss X, Y, and Z. There will be a report back post breakaway session. And because of that, it's very important that you have someone assigned to that breakaway room that will be taking on the role of the facilitator during that breakaway session. And then there are just a few general online COP protocols or sort of COP etiquette or whatever you want to call it. So firstly, very good communication with the participants as to what they're going to be doing with the videos. Will videos be on and off? Will it just be the person speaking at the time using the video? Of course, microphones staying off unless you're speaking, because often there's a lot of background noise that we don't realize is interfering. You might hear it, but you don't realize that your microphone is very sensitive and it's translating through to that. Again, like I said, making sure that people understand that there will be breakaway rooms and discussions that are going on during the meeting, and it's not just sprung upon them that they're going to be doing this. And then sort of also telling people that the presentations will be sent out and all of that, because often what happens is in the chat functionality you have people asking, will this presentation be shared? You've got 20 people asking the same question and not looking at the responses of others, and it really starts clogging up a very, very useful bit of technology in that chat function, and stuff starts to get missed. So that's really important in terms of what we've learned. Then as well, I mentioned earlier in the interview that the networking aspect seems to be missing. And so we found that participants also really, really want this aspect of networking, and it's how do we best balance the presentation of the content during the online COP, but also allowing for participants to actually just have the opportunity to speak to each other like they would during a physical community of practice, that will just allow them to say, oh, I haven't seen you since 3 months ago, and it's great to catch up, while still balancing that with good protocol online. So yeah, those are some of the learnings, obviously not limited to just that.
Yeah, it sounds like Bridge has a lot to share in terms of the learning learned during this lockdown and convening online COP. And it sounds as though the education sector would learn a lot from the communities of practice and how Bridge is currently convening their online CoPs. The pandemic won't last forever. So what is Bridge planning to do with regards to moving from online to face-to-face, or rather from face-to-face to online? So what exactly are you planning to do with regards to that?
Cool. Yeah, so that was really interesting, and it's something that we at Bridge have been discussing and trying to figure out a way around, because obviously over the last 10 years, Bridge has built a reputation on convening really robust and good, well-attended physical communities of practice. And then over these last 6 months by this stage, sort of, we've had to really pivot into only being able to do an online offering. That being said, there have of course been the advantages of doing things online. It's exposed people to a new way of doing meetings, but ultimately we would like to get back to doing face-to-face meetings. So of course, once the lockdown has lifted and it is safe for people to be in the same room, we will be continuing with physical communities of practice. Of course, if there are limitations to that, we will be doing it within what the laws allow us to. But the really, really interesting thing was we asked the community what they wanted. And we were surprised to see that they'd actually be very receptive to a blended mix of the online versus physical. And traditionally, each focus area would have about 4 CoPs a year. Of course, up until 2020, that was 4 physical meetings. During 2020, some CoPs have had more than 4 meetings in this half a year period, just because the opportunity allows us to do that. And so what the community has said is they really want a mix of sort of half and half. So if we were to do 4 CoPs for a focus area, it would be 2 physical and 2 online. What we did find was it's very difficult to blend a physical and online meeting into one. And so that means the meetings would likely only be physical, with a streaming, with the presentations being streamed to anyone that wants to watch it online, but with limited online interaction. And of course, if it is an online only CoP, there will be no opportunity for there to be a physical meeting. So that really is what Bridge plans to do going forward. Of course, we were forced into the online communities of practice in 2020, but it might have been a blessing in disguise, because it looks like it really is a good way for us to go forward with our mixed physical and online approach.
Thank you, Craig. Those are very interesting insights and learnings that you've shared as well. And I think the education sector and other organizations would be very interested in learning how you actually applied your communities of practice in this difficult time. And I think Bridge is really doing great in terms of getting people connected and continuously getting people interacting and engaged as well. Thank you.
No, of course, and thank you, Akani. It's Bridge's principle is to share these learnings and for other organizations to use them. And so I think it would be really helpful. And if they would like to contact us, our door is always open. So thank you.
Thank you, Craig.
Cool.